Thank you once again for each one of you for coming back on time. Ladies and gentlemen, up next is the panel discussion regarding the markets driving opportunities for the Indian supply chain ecosystem. Our moderator for the session is Mr. Devendranath, CEO and MD, Feedback Advisory Services Private Limited, has over 3 decades of research and consulting experience working with the best of firms and market leaders and industry associations in the field of electronics and semiconductors. He's been involved in over 1,650 engagements involving strategic consulting, opportunity assessment engagements, diversification and growth strategies. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a huge round of applause and welcome our moderator for the session. I would like to invite our panelist, Mr. Josh Folger, the President, ITHW and New Projects of Dixon Technologies, to please join us on the stage. Mr. Josh is a seasoned industry veteran with over 30 years of global experience in electronic system design and manufacturing, ESDM. We heartily welcome you, sir. And we also have, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Niranjan Nayak, the Managing Director, Delta Electronics India Private Limited, to please join us on the stage. He's been a key driver of the company's growth and transformation for over 2 decades. And with that, we have our panelist, Mr. Satyendra Singh, CEO, Syrma SGS, is a global executive with over 3 decades of experience in strategy, operations, global supply chain, manufacturing, and business management. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a huge round of applause for our moderator, for our panelist for the session.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, after that rousing inaugural session, we have a very difficult task of making sure we keep you all in the room before we head out for lunch. The panel discussion is very interesting one today, and something which is very close to my heart because we have been studying the whole electronics ecosystem for quite some time now. And I think it is very appropriately titled as Markets Driving the Opportunities for Indian Supply Chain Ecosystem in the Indian Electronics Value Chain. Before we get down to the panel discussion, a quick, as an observer of the industry, when we study different markets and different sectors, and what we have seen in the last 8 or 10 years happening in the electronic sector is truly outstanding. And I think electronics manufacturing is one sector in India which has seen the sharpest growth when you look at a sectoral comparison with different sectors. And I would say the first wave of growth was essentially driven by mobile phone manufacturing. But now the ambitions from $150 billion to about $500 billion will essentially be driven by not just mobile phones. Of course, mobiles will be one of the key drivers. But since we are talking of markets driving electronic supply chain, so there are a host of other sectors which are opening up for electronics manufacturing. To start with, at the very top, we are talking of increasing our manufacturing contribution to the GDP from 15-16%. The Niti Aayog has set out a vision for about 25% contribution of manufacturing. So that itself will drive a lot of manufacturing investments in the country. And those manufacturing investments will drive a need for a lot of automation and other products. So there is this whole huge market of industrial electronics, automation products waiting to happen from India. Right now, many of them are imported and many of them are not being done in the country. So that is one segment. Then we have this whole segment of automotive in the country. We all know what is happening in the automotive sector, the way the passenger cars market, the two-wheelers market, the electric vehicles market is growing. So that is already an important sector in the current that is bound to grow further. So that's the second big ticket item which is likely to happen. And the third and the very important sector is this whole strategic sector of defense and aerospace. And a lot of focus on Atmanirbhar Bharat, doing things for India, and Operation Sindhu really showed us what we can do in that space. So that is another sector which is likely to boom, and with all the MROs coming into the country, we will see a lot of strategic manufacturing happening, and those will help our overall electronics manufacturing grow. And of course, this whole consumer electronic space now with the reduction in GST and other things. So we are likely to see that boom also happening. Our panel will discuss all these aspects and which are the other factors and what can we see in the next 5 years, what will happen to the electronics value chain. I think this is the broad thought process for this panel discussion. Thank you, gentlemen. I have a very august panel here with me, the industry leaders, people who have done this in the past. And let me start with one question to all of you which you can answer before we get on to some specifics. How do you characterize the current state of Indian electronic supply chain? Are there any critical gaps so that we can focus on those gaps in our discussion further? Josh, we can start with you.
First of all, can we give a round of applause for our moderator, please? Your report was amazing, so thanks, Dave, and again, thanks for helping us moderate this in the last moment. So I think, when you look at the current state of ESDM in India, I feel that the EMS box is checked. I think we did that way back in Nokia time, right here in Sri Perumbudur. We made 920 million phones were made out here over a span of 8 years. So, and then since then, there has been spectacular sort of investments, coming together. So most of the categories, I think EMS box is checked. Components, I think we've been doing that in fits and starts. I think the ECMS scheme and the ISM 2.0 with the current allowances and is definitely going to fill the gap. It's going to take time. I think the challenge is it's going to take time, but the components is sort of a box in a way we have not checked. I think it's something we have to focus on. Another box we have to check is the design bit. There are categories where we do design well. There are categories we don't do any design. The whole ODM capability is the IP creation, which we heard sort of in the inaugural session, is very important. We have DLI schemes which kind of look at moderate level, but it's not enough. I think so. I think I'll say EMS yes, components and design are gaps today. So
yeah, Niranjan, if you could.
Vanakkam. Very good afternoon to everyone. First of all, thanks to Elsina for this wonderful opportunity which is being created, and then we had a very interesting inaugural session this morning. And I'm also glad to share views together with the industry veterans. But then when we talk about the India supply chain industry today, I would say we are in the defining moment. Why do I say so? Because the supply chain today is not a temporary demand. It's basically a structural shift which is driven by digitization, which is driven by energy transition as well as infrastructure modernization. And we as a industry partners, as a supply chain fraternity here, we have a huge opportunity, at the same time a larger responsibility to carry on our shoulders. And if we have to quickly, in fact, Dave was also trying to understand the kind of gaps. I would say in any emerging industry or in any emerging opportunity, there we would find a lot of gaps. I would put them as a part of improvement, but then there are two areas which I can quickly tick upon. One is, in the morning also, a few dignitaries have spoken about it. That's how can we bring value by increasing the design activity in the entire supply chain in India. Because today, we might be depending on the overseas, which either with the help of overseas partners or the India companies, how do we bring that value here in terms of R&D, IP, and many such things. The second thing, there is a strong intent and a good foundation laid by the central various state governments, including Tamil Nadu. Very happy to hear ministers are explaining all those things. I think we as an industry have to increase or improve our discipline in terms of execution of these strategies. These are the two areas I would say that we may have to focus and then bring it from there to have a sustainable growth for all the supply chain industries in India. That's what I would like to mention at this point of time.
Brilliant, sir. Thank you so much. Satyendra ji, if you could set out your opening remarks.
Morning, everyone.
Closer to the...
Can you hear me now? Looks like it's working now. All right, morning, rather afternoon actually. We started session in the morning. So first of all, congratulations to Raju and Alcina team. I think the session overall and the ecosystem and the displays have come up very well. I am personally coming after many years and I can see distinct difference. So excellent organization, and thank you Raju for inviting us to share our ideas. Now, talking about electronics supply chain, where are we? So whenever I kind of get to these sessions, I always remember some interesting questions which were asked to me in many of the sessions. I remember I was talking to a global executive about, let's say 15, 16 years ago, not going too far. Actually about 17 years ago. And I was giving him a pitch that we can do this and we can do that, etc., etc. And he's like, yeah, it's okay. You first do what I told you to do, and after that we will talk. That was a very short summary of my interaction with that gentleman. As luck would have it, or because of the team, whatever team did, we had a fantastic run, and whatever else we tried to do, we have been successful at it. From that time, being told, it's okay. Essentially, he was saying, don't bother about it. I know you can't do it. Talk to me when you have done anything, and then we will discuss. From that time, today, when we have same discussions with global fraternity of supply chain leaders, India and outside, conversation has changed. Nobody is asking us, can you do it? When I run an EMS company, Sirma SGS, when we talk to the global executives, they are like, yeah, we know you can do it. From we know you can't do it, it has come to we know you can do it. The conversation is we know you can do it at good quality. Conversation is around, can you do it fast enough? Can you do it at the right cost level? More often than not, the answer is yes. Now, that doesn't come intuitively to anybody. That doesn't happen without a lot of hard work which factories do, which people in supply chain do. There's a lot of hard work to be done. So we have come a long way from where we were to where we are. Now, when we shift gears and then you start thinking about it again, okay, really have we come a long way? Yes, we have come a long way, but there's a lot to be done. We are right at the point of inflection. The sky is the limit today. Josh talked about EMS had been started, yes. So the way I define it is system manufacturing is happening. Or if you want to use a typical word, dabba manufacturing is happening. So we are doing the boxes, we are doing the PCB mounting components and all. We are doing it at a very good scale. What's required? For it to be sustainable, because there are these waves of manufacturing wherein you start manufacturing and then kind of it settles down. How do we ensure that the momentum is not lost? How do we ensure that it continues at the pace at which it has been happening over the last 5-10 years? I'll use an acronym. So typically, my Nokia colleagues here will remember we talk about BTS. So I'll expand that a little bit. So my BTS is having 2 more S's after that. So first thing you look at is the business. Is there business to be done? Yes, business is there. There's a lot of consumption. In India, there's a lot of consumption which is waiting to be supplied from India with the FTAs, with Europe, with the FTA in works with US, with the UK FTA, and the fact that global fraternity recognizes India as a credible manufacturing source, there is business to be taken. Second thing, you talk about technology. Do we have the technology? Answer is mixed, yes and no. So if you talk about typical SMT manufacturing like the business we are in, answer is yes, we have the technology. There are many parts wherein we still have a lot to do. So it's a mixed bag, and we need to continue to work. Good part is, like Minister was sharing, 1.5 lakh engineers coming out of Tamil Nadu. If you put across the country, we have million plus engineers coming out every year. So with that, and the most important thing is about the intuitive, about the sharp thinking on the feet. Our engineers can solve every problem, whatever that be. I have never ever found a situation wherein, if I use my words, if I throw a problem at them, the answer comes out much better than what I expected. I throw a challenge to them, do it at 10, they come back with 15. So with that, couple it with the engineering mindset, there is no doubt the technology can be taken care of. So we have dealt with B, we have dealt with T, and now we talk about the third one, S, which is what I already talked about, the skill level. So engineering skills and the shop floor skills. Between technology and skill, I think we are pretty well there. The fourth alphabet is S, which is again scale. Scale is getting built up, and with the business being available, I think we can have the right scale, and we are able to put up the plant at the level at which we are competitive. Being the largest, generally people talk about, can you do 100x? Yes, good to do 100x. Frankly, economies of scale don't kick in at 100x. At some point, economies of scale start to taper off. You don't get any more advantages. So success for us is to find out what is the right size for the plant, for the operation which we are running. And the last one is supply chain, as an inbound supply chain, and that's where we have a lot of work to do. So when I think about it, where is the challenge for us as an industry? I would say inbound supply chain is something which we need to work really hard on. We need to ensure that, depending on the company, somebody imports 80%, somebody imports 90%, or somebody could be higher or lower, but 80 to 90% of our components are imported. What can we do to make it in India? There is huge opportunity for us. If we do simple mathematics, let's say 300 billion, 80% is 240 billion, so that's the business which is waiting for us to take. And that's what we need to work on it. And the last thing which I would say is, again, go back to the word which I use, systems thinking. So we'll need to think as a system, as a complete ecosystem. Not just system, it's ecosystem. So can we have the products made in India, designed in India, and supplied with Indian brands? That's what I would say we should be looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Very useful and very pertinent points you have mentioned there, Satyendraji. Josh, if I could come to you. Earlier when we were discussing, you had mentioned about how India is now 3 Indias, and there are various opportunities which it throws up. Can you expand a bit more on that and explain to the audience what are these 3 Indias and how does it?
Thank you, Dev. I think it's an important question. I think Satyendra mentioned that today the global supply chains come to India knowing very well that we can deliver things. But I think it's also important to understand what India is. So India, there is India, then there is India Plus, which is the export opportunity. India as a market, at least I categorize it at 3 Indias. The India one is the so-called developed world product portfolio. So the product symmetry is like Japan or EU, US grade products, right? India 1 today in ESDM is the size, or generally for all products, is the size of the Nordic countries. By 2030, this will be the size of Japan, which is significant, right? And so India 2 is I'll say the best way to characterize that is a mid-range Android phone market or a mid-size sedan today, right? And but here is where there is premiumization which is already happening. So it is not global one, but there's a premiumization which is driving towards this, and this is very massive. This is we call it so-called the Indian middle class with some purchasing power parity there, but I think it's clearly a huge one. So India 2 is large and growing, right? Then comes India 3, which is, we say it's bottom of the pyramid, but it's not really bottom of the pyramid also. So I think it's there. So when you characterize just the Indian market, we share product symmetries with the developed world, the developing world, and the to be developed world. And this makes us very apt when we design and manufacture these products in India. We can competitively, these are great things for the India Plus story.
Thanks, Josh. That is definitely very nicely put. Thank you. Niranji, if I come to you, Delta represents a diversified electronics manufacturing company, representing segments such as solar, EVs, automation. So from this perspective, how do you see the opportunities in these sectors? And I would like to specifically focus on the opportunities in data centers, because the government of India in the recent budget has given a huge boost to the data centers opportunity management. But that is not just an opportunity for data centers, there is a huge opportunity for electronics as well. So if you could highlight something similar.
Quite an interesting subject, I would say, for the last 1 decade. All put together, renewable energy, electric vehicle, data center, which is already growing and then expected to grow exponentially. So maybe we can touch upon these three primarily. The first one is I would say, the data center. So in the recent budget, government relaxing the tax holidays given to the data center investments in India, and the kind of population what we have who are using the data center today, less than 10%, I would say 5 to 7% data centers are existing in India. Rest all, whatever we see in our mobile phones, the data is stored out of India. There is an expectation that we increase, and then I'm sure any government for that matter globally would like to keep their data inside their country. It's always from the safety point of view, security point of view, data security point of view. And having this tax holiday, this is going to throw a very good opportunity for India to quickly grab. Of course, today, when we talk about whole data center, at this point of time, even though whatever those less than 10% data centers, we might be involved or engaged in terms of having the real estate as well as those products brought from another country and then installing them in India. We have not started manufacturing the core components which are going to be part of this data center. So that's where we need to quickly understand that what is the kind of data center expectation or requirements in the next 5 years or 10 years. And then what are there, especially it might start from the EMS or maybe manufacturing segment, that like the mobile phone or there are quite a lot of other manufacturing which are happening in India. First step is to see how can we bring or localize those manufacturing of the servers or switches or all those components in India. This could be the first level for us to look at it. In parallel, since we are working in this industry for quite long, from the power segment as well as the component suppliers, we also have seen few of the AI data center design have started happening in India, whether it happens in India or whether it happens globally. So how do we collaborate with those design houses to strengthen the local design and add onto that manufacturing? So that's the second thing. And this would certainly give, I'm sure there are a lot of supply chain who are working in the electronics. They can also try to see what kind of a support they can create locally, because even if the data center designs have to happen here or the server design has to happen, they always rely on the manufacturing. Today, as a part of, let's say, data center power manufacturing here, and then we do quite a lot of design. In fact, just to answer Satyendra ji, that when Delta started, of course, we started with more system assembly, but then Later, we moved into the manufacturing. We said local for local, local for global. And we also have strengthened our R&D here because we understood that the kind of expertise, both Josh as well as Satyendra have spoken, we have a good competency here in terms of the engineering, in terms of the design. So coming back to data center, how can we start manufacturing first place, then bring in the design, and then support the vendors? I can add one more example here, not particular to electronics, maybe coming from mechanical as well as thermal, but then this can be brought into electronics space also. When we had to set up a data center, AI data center, it needs a large cooling solutions. We call it a secondary fluid network. So we did not have that expertise in India, whether we as an organization or whether any partners. So we had to discuss who are having similar expertise of piping, and then give them those knowledge from the overseas to be ready to support them in terms of bringing out the piping or secondary fluid network for data center. And that's where we have to handhold. So these are some of the areas where OEMs or where larger organizations can try to handhold. And then this is the way which we can bring a lot of technologies to India. And there are many technology or OEM partners from the global who are interested to support. We need to identify them. So those areas which we have to study. Quickly on the second topic, electric vehicle. Electric vehicle, now the complete format of vehicle is changing from the mechanical or the machine to electric machine or a drive. Or there are quite a lot of power supplies going into that, quite a lot of clusters are going into it. So how the electronics supply chain or the manufacturing or the design houses try to understand this and then develop the design locally to make sure that we support here first and then we can go. When we talk about electric vehicle, I would say two-wheeler and three-wheeler are going to be the highest potential. So what I suggest is that we as a supply chain have to understand what are the options or opportunities available based on the platform being created by the government or large OEMs, and then how can we fall in place to support them and make sure that we improve our quality, reliability, design capability to be part of that journey. And I would say that this is going to be the area which is going to really grow bigger. And once we are sustainable in India, we can, or in parallel, we can always look at the global market. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Very elaborate and very clear. Satyendra ji, you can come to you, please. Syrma has been one company which is participated in the ECMSC. We are now vertically integrating backwards into manufacturing PCBs. So, how does a PLS company get into components manufacturing? Is it a very different mindset you require to make components or different elements? What are the challenges involved?
All right. First of all, I think this is a great initiative by government to have ECMS scheme come up. And they have clearly realized that there is a lot more to be done, and that's why the outlay which they had 22,000 odd crore has gone to 40,000 crore with the budget. So it's a great scheme. If I start from my comments previously, which is about 80% of stuff coming in broadly, getting imported from somewhere or other, I think the opportunity is huge. I was looking up some numbers. If I talk about PCB alone, I think the statistics says that about 70,000 crore worth of PCBs are required by 2030. So 70,000 crore, that's the market. Now, if you do the mathematics further, typically PCB is a business wherein asset turnover is 1, give or take. So that means to do 70,000 crore worth of PCB revenue in a year, you need that much investment to be done. So today, when I look at all the projects which are announced, give or take about 15,000 crore is what has been announced, and that would be done over next couple of years. Our own investment is about 2,000 crore. There are a few of other colleagues in the industry, they have all announced, and I was talking to some of them. Everybody is like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 crores. So give or take 15,000, 16,000 crore. That means that is what is going to be the revenue once all the projects are up on stream. That leaves a gap of still almost 50,000 crores worth of PCBs to be made. Intuitively, one would say, hey, EMS is different. Absolutely. Just to draw a parallel on that, EMS is very different business. So the asset turnover, which I'm talking about, 1 is 1 to 5. So we typically operate between 5 to 6. So every 1,000 crore, if I'm investing in EMS business, I could get revenue between 5 to 6,000 crore. All right? That's the nature of EMS business. And again, if I was to use the same mathematics for one of my previous assignments from immediate previous job, then it will be 1:10. Because when you make expensive telecom equipment, then it goes almost 1:10. So depending on the mix. Either way, it's the component business is asset intensive. Component business is volume sensitive or super sensitive. But you cannot make a component manufacturing or PCB manufacturing for your captive consumption. Often people talk about, hey, are you vertically integrating? Yes and no. Yes, because we have possibility of using it. No, because it's not going to be enough market for us or enough scale for us if we have to consume our own PCBs alone. Yes, we will consume, but the intent is to supply to the industry. Our plant is going to have a capacity of 1.2 million square meters a year. That's our starting plan. So once we have gone through the phase 1, that's going to be the capacity. Phase 2 will be 2.1 million square meter. So 900 more. So the point here is there is business for everyone to take. There is investments to be made. Now, whether it's an EMS company or anyone else, let's go ahead and make that investment, because differentiator in the future will be only two things. One is the component supply, and second will be your intellectual property. Everything else in between, you can find your way around. And on the component side, again, I'll bring in the design element or intellectual property element, because one of the interesting things which we face in industry. So as a company, we are trying to go deeper into design. So what we want to do is we want to increase our ODM content from what it is to 2 times or 3 times. That's our strategy. Now, when I look at that, there is always a discussion about how do we ensure the design which we are doing or the product which we are trying to make has the right quality. No negotiations there, right? Meeting the specs, no negotiation there. Price, absolutely no negotiation there. Because customer wants it at the price which they want it. Now, how do you get to that price point? To get to that price point in our lingo, as I call it system, I was using the word system again. When I say system, I'm talking about just the EMS piece of it. That means SMD, box build, and whatever else. When you look at that design, break it down, you're talking about give or take 80% component cost. Now, you have different sources of those components. You can buy an international component, you can buy an Asian component, you can buy an Indian component, and so on and so on. One of the interesting challenges which we have is components from one particular country, you know who I'm talking about, are way cheaper than similar component from some other countries. One way to look at is could be a very standard answer. Yeah, they do things, whatever. The way I look at it is one of the things which we need to learn is they have re-engineered and redesigned the very components itself. They are not looking at the standard method. They are looking at how can I redesign the process of the component manufacturing? How can I replace the particular material, raw material? How can I re-engineer it? And how can I finally end up with a cost which is 20, 30, 40% cheaper? So that is one thing which I think we have to work. Back to the point, as a strategy, I think it's for all of us in the industry to find out what's our niche, where we can contribute, and let's collaborate together. Let's not be sensitive as to who's making it. As long as somebody in India is making it, let's use it. Let's help each other. That's the only way we can grow.
Thank you, sir. Josh, if I can turn to you, a slightly out of box question, because you tick most of the boxes in the right direction. So, you have worked in most of the manufacturing or the EMS side of it, be it the MNC brands like Nokia, Foxconn, and now you are working for India's largest EMS manufacturer itself. But there is one gap in the whole Indian electronics ecosystem, that is Indian brands in Indian electronics. So how does one go about creating an Indian brand?
It's definitely out of syllabus, but I've taken some exams out of syllabus, so didn't fare too well, but let me make an attempt. No, I think being part of Nokia for a long time, we understood the brands. Brand development is very important because if it's a brand, especially if it's a ESDM product. So a couple of thoughts really on that. I think one is from an functionality, engineering, performance standpoint, we have to put all of this together into a product, right? An elemental level of entry there for a company like us would be like a JRD, joint R&D exercise. We get into then, let's say, an ODM level where you do really productize it. And I think you really start to white label. When you get into ODM, you really start to white label. Right? But I think the progress for a manufacturer like us is to start with the JRD, work closely with the brand, and then build the spec, right? Now, on the other side, the brand development is sort of another journey. So I think the Indian automotive story probably offers one of the better examples today, right? You see, if you look at the four-wheeler segment today, Tata and Mahindra have really gained share, both in ICE and in EV space. The product portfolios is just amazing, right? And they really gained share, right? While Maruti has dropped share the last 18 months, 10 points, they've really gained share. So it's because they have really made this journey, and suppliers are delivering solutions, for them. Be it cockpit solutions, battery solutions, motor solutions, the suppliers are there, coming there. So this journey, the two-wheeler category, when you look at a company like Ather, which has developed this ground up, right? So you have to sort of, and I think it's this marriage of somebody with a vision to develop a product which is reliable and whatnot, and then manufacturers like us who really bring this. And I think this auto example can serve as a good example. I think Mr. Lal will be better apt to explain what Dixon does. I'm still not on roll, but I'm led to believe that, for instance, Dixon is already delivering solutions for certain white goods category products, washing machines, refrigerators as an example. So that competency is there. I think how do you scale it for other ESDM verticals? It's going to be the marriage of the brand walking towards us and then us walking towards the brand. So.
Brilliant. Thank you. If we come to you, we earlier spoke on how testing and skill manpower. These are some of the big challenges for our whole in the supply chain. Can you elaborate more on that? What more needs to be done?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. But before I get onto that question, maybe I really like the question which you have asked and then Josh has answered in terms of the brand, which is very true. He gave a right example. I was thinking the similar example in my mind before he came out with the example. It's important for us as a country to build our own brands in the segments where we go, and then how to learn from the automotive or how to learn from some of the FMCG maybe. So one is that to bring out the right product. And we are seeing in many of the startups, Ather is something which you have already identified and then said. There is also a fan, ceiling fan, DC fan brand, which is also doing very well. So one is that it's important to create the visibility in the market. Second, what is more important, India being a very large country, how do we make sure that the distribution is really set up there? Because unless we have a distribution, even though create the visibility when somebody goes to ask for that product, so he will not be able to get. And then the third, which is even more important, is the service network. How do we create the service network? And that's where sometimes it is more expensive for anybody to build the brand, considering the visibility he has to create, the distribution network he has to create, the service network he has to create. And then many of the business houses, they try to either stay with more consolidated activity or, let's say, B2B, rather than going to B2C. Anyway, that's what a few thoughts which I had, I thought of, I could not resist reflecting it. Coming back to the topic of how do we strengthen our testing or certification, I would say, I mean, we spoke about R&D, I spoke about strengthening the design in India and then making sure that the IP, because even during the initial session, they spoke about IPs. Of course, I would say still as a nation, we need to further strengthen our number of IPs which a nation could hold. And then this has to be distributed by the various industry and make sure that we carry a lot of IPs. This is very important to create that value. We as a long-term manufacturing supply chain and then the brand building. Certification, again, what happens is that when we look at the supply chain which are coming from the global, and when we have to build the supply chain here, we also have to focus in terms of these certifications, and at the end of the day, they matters, because when we are going to the global kind of a product supply, so unless we are able to create these certification and then a robust testing infrastructure. Government is also supporting in this area, but then I would say we still need to develop even further. Maybe with the help of electronics manufacturing clusters, having testing agencies nearly available. Today, sometimes we also have to send for a few kind of endurance test or a chemical test, we have to send it very far or even sometimes overseas. How do we as an industry try to bring these testing facilities very close to us so that we are quicker and we are effective? How can we make sure that these testing facilities are not, of course, human is important, but then sometimes to avoid the error, to make sure the repeatability, and to make sure the accuracy, how can we make them more automated, more AI-driven? In fact, software is one of the strengths what India has, and then how can we use our software strength to bring the AI testing into an action? And this could be an industry for some of the supply chain, I would say. This is also someone can supply to the companies. I think this is where we really need to think quite a lot. There are two more points which I quickly wanted to mention here. We were mentioning a pre-panel discussion I was discussing with Dev. One is related to the automation. See, unless because the point where we are now trying to head, for the other country when they have started their manufacturing activity, things were more stable and then they could grow with the developing countries supporting them in terms of buying those products or giving them the opportunity. But at this point of time, someone have already gone much ahead of us, if we have to say so. And then when we are starting here, we also are facing a lot of other disturbances or challenges in the industry. So we cannot start from the beginning, we have to start future. For which, how do we also strengthen our manufacturing infrastructure in terms of making it automated, making it more quality, stronger, and then less errors happening from the manufacturing. So many things we have to work. So this is where I would also pitch in that automation, and even automation is going to grow in India even further. And as a supply chain, you also can look at that kind of an industry. How do you cooperate in terms of automation? Even when semicon is coming or EMS is coming, they all need this. How do we grow? Second one is about the supplier financing, which they wanted to. It's a very vast subject, so I will not be able to speak too long on this. But then what I would say that, yes, OEMs also have to think how do they bring. In fact, when Delta has built our factory in Krishnagiri, we also kept about 20 acres for the suppliers to come and put their factories there, very close to us. And we are not telling them that, okay, you only have to supply to Delta. We give you this initial support, or we also can discuss in terms of other benefits for the Indian suppliers. We are not talking about overseas. Of course, overseas is also important, but then at the same time Indian. We can also give you certain, but you can also supply to the other manufacturers, other OEMs. We don't want to hold you, because the more you become open, it also finally gets that kind of a benefit back to us. So these are some of the areas which we can certainly focus upon. Yeah, that's what I just wanted to share my thoughts.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. In the interest of time, sir, certainly let me start with my last question, and then I'll open up the audience. I want each one of you to, if you were given an opportunity to set out 3 specific points which are needed to make India better integrated into the global value chain, what would those be? Something that you can start.
Well, I think which 3, I mean, I'll start with the, again, supply chain. So we need to focus on components, big time, and we don't have too much time left, very frankly. In my mind, next 4 to 5 years, we need to make sure that we build up a solid component supply chain. Second thing is we need to, I mean, there was a question around brand building and all. So the way I look at the industry, there will be companies like us. The where I work today is the companies which are supporting other brands. That's necessary, but not sufficient condition for the future growth. The explosive growth for industry as well as for companies like us will come from the brands. When you have Indian brands, so that means I'm talking about design content. Someone in the business has to take the risk, go out, create a brand, create their reputation, and capture the market. So creating the brands of our own. And third thing is basically change our mindset. And what I mean by this, and this is controversial, many times we say that fellow is better, this is there, that is cheaper. I have not found a situation where Indians, if we apply our brain, that we will fail. So let's apply our brain, let's make sure that we have the confidence, let's trust ourselves and start with the mindset that yes, we will win. So supply chain build up, design / brand building, and third is the mindset, the belief in ourselves.
The first one is industries should collaborate with the universities to develop the real industry kind of a practice which would help, of course, the entire industry, or maybe including the supply chain. I think this is where the industry collaboration with academia is still quite low in India, or this is where we may have to strengthen. Make sure that we bring the curriculum into we bring the industry practice into the curriculum so that they would help us to strengthen primarily what we are discussing about manufacturing or supply chain. And there are many other, but then from this perspective also, I thought this is one of the very important factor. Second, we should be open to go out and collaborate with many technology partners globally, because as we have opened up, it's also important to look at the local strengths through the academia, universities, and also the global strengths with the help of technology partners, which will certainly help us to increase our supply chain as well as manufacturing ability in India. Third, we as a country, we as an industry, we have to see various aspects to strengthen our brand building. Again, when we talk about the brand building, there are many countries now talking about ESG is one of the part which they would like vendors to have. And then generally, whether it is a large vendor or a small vendor, sometimes we miss these things, and then we always are little late in terms of acquiring these kind of I would say, credibility. So beyond developing R&D and then the quality, reliability, all those things, So how can we try to acquire these credibility so that it could help us to be a good supply chain in India as well as global? So those are the three things which I just wanted to understand.
Thank you so much. Last word, Anush.
No, I think, see, from companies and supply chain standpoint, I think you have to be world class. When you're dealing with global value chains, and let's say even Indian value chain is going up across, it has to be world class. I think world class in quality, in delivery, in predictability. You have to do that. I think that's number one. I will say, I'll pick on the government a little bit. I see Dr. Darius, here. So I think good news is Tamil Nadu has been consistent. So I think it's very important that we are consistent, because we go make a promise to the global value chain that this will happen, be it a supply chain topic, a logistics topic, or an incentive topic, right? I think you have to be consistent. That's on the government. The third, I think, third idea is Niranjan talked about a partnership with the universities. The last 20 years of me being in India, I found greater joy in partnering with diploma institutions. And last week I went to my hometown after 20 years, and I went to an ITI school, which is like 150 years old, and not doing very well, And so, but bright kids who really want to sort of make a big difference. So I think I think the onus is on us. We're not going to put this on the government. I think you're doing enough already. I think the industry, we have to work closely and build our own talent pipeline at the, I'll say, grassroots level. So those would be, I'll say, three ideas which can set us up.
Fantastic, sir. Thank you so much. Now, do we have any questions from the audience? Can you have some mics in the audience?
My name is Durai. I own a brand called NeoTouch. NeoTouch is into interactive touch displays. We supply to schools, colleges, and education institutions and corporates. And two things I want to bring to the audience and the committee. The mindset for supporting the Indian brands need to be built among the consumers and buyers. This is one important thing. Still, we have the belief that only foreign brands can give the best quality, best service. This is one thing which we need to strongly build. That is one thing. Another thing is government through GEM is trying hard, but buyers at different states still favor foreign brands and putting tough conditions which is hard for Indian brands to meet. So many places. This is something which every day I am facing, and many corporates are started buying, including Saint Gopian and all this. All these people have started buying, and we have supplied. And this is what I have, so people can give some inputs regarding this.
Thank you so much. Well, on the second part, related to GEM, I don't think the panel can answer that. But we can request the LCMA Secretary to only see if they have any issues with GEM and sourcing and not getting the required criteria, they can do a representation there, they can help you definitely there. The first question.
So, just maybe one anecdotal example. So when we started Nokia 20 years ago, almost to the day, when we were trying to sell the Nokia products made in India, the local dealers felt that the imported quality was better. And so the first 6 months, the only thing we focused on was outgoing quality and heat. It was very important. So what we had to do is we bought all the dealers, distributors, and I showed them the numbers, they saw the factory. So once they saw the factory, they were convinced. We did the same thing for Southeast Asia Pacific also. We had a lot of people from Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand. They all came. All these, about 30 ladies came. And we made the same pitch and presentation to them. And seeing is believing sometimes. They come and saw the factory, they saw the numbers. We had the same issue in Africa when we were exporting to Africa. They wanted quality from Hungary. Products were produced in Hungary. So I showed them the data, what the quality performance was in Hungary, which was 5 times worse than Chennai at that time. So it was my boss's factory, ex-boss's factory, and was the largest factory. And then we essentially replaced Hungary in a big way because of us getting into Middle East Africa. So it's possible. It's been done in the past. So I think that's, but you have to build it ground up. You have to build that credibility ground up there. And this was Nokia, you know, and we had to build the credibility ground up.
Yeah, completely. I agree with you as well as what Josh mentioned. In fact, when we started Delta Electronics Krishnagiri, or even before when we have a factory in Rudrapur, so we were always having a target to increase our local supply chain base. We would like to, because it's very difficult for any OEM or a manufacturers to continue to import and then use it locally. So the target is always there, and then our supply chain team has a special team who continue to work in terms of developing the supply chain. That target is there. Only thing is that we have to see how do we try to connect and then maybe comply in terms of the specification. If there are any parts even there from our OEMs in the AVL, then we also try to discuss with them too. We have gone to an extent, and then still more to come. So we have to make sure in terms of the quality, reliability. So once that is done, then for sure, we would be more than happy to use the local supply chain base.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. In the interest of time, can I take one last question, Rajuji, and then we'll wind up. Yeah. Yeah. Just one last, because the gentleman has stood.
Papa. Hello, my name is Ken. I'm representing a German company called Jack PCB. We are offering PCB production for prototypes, specifically for supply chain de-risking. And I have a question because when I go into China, I realized that factories capture customers early by offering instant prototyping. And in India, everyone seems to prefer mass production because quoting small batches is a headache. So I now also understand, based on your explanations, that, for example, the component gap is one of the problems here. But how do you see this capability generally developing in India?
Yeah. Satyenderji, if you could take this up.
I think that's about the mindset and understanding of the business. If I specifically comment on PCB, one of the challenges which I have had many times is the business of PCB goes to the person who's doing the prototyping. As the engineers work with the new designs, they are doing first prototype, second, third prototype. Intuitive thinking is, okay, here is the person who knows how to make the PCBs, how to do the business, and they get it. So if I was to give a free advice, unsolicited advice to somebody who's into PCB business, please do as many samples as you can, because that is the best pipeline you can have for your business. But yes, that challenge is there. I think, and frankly, coming from operational background, I've run factories long enough, I completely understand the bias. I empathize with the plant managers or the business leaders. But the fact of the matter is, we as business leaders will have to find a way to do the sample business as well as volume business, because with the sample business is when you get to the volume business. It can't be either or. In our own business, for example, right here in this city, we have 3 factories in the current business. In one of the buildings, we have a dedicated line for prototyping. We are an EMS, we are not PCB business, but in EMS also you do the samples, right? You do the prototyping, low volume business. We have created one separate dedicated line as capable, as good as anything else in other 3 factories here and 15 factories around the country. And the reason we have done it is very simple. When a plant manager has to take a decision of allocation of resources, he or she says, I'm going to get 99% revenue by doing these 16 things. Why do I worry about 65 things which will get me 1% revenue? Because for him or her, it's about the KPIs which people like me and some of us in the room have set up. So the only way to help it is to segregate it a bit. We in our position, I'm sure many of our other industry colleagues are doing the similar things. Separate the two and create that clear focus. Because in that case, this one particular line in our case, which we call it Zone of Autonomous Creation, we have given a nice word, ZAC, as we call it. That person who's running that area is clearly aware that she has to ensure that this line runs to the best and the customers are happy with it. So that's how we do it, and I'm sure others have different recipes, but clearly one has to be in that business because that's the best pipeline you have for volume.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. With that, we wind up, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
Ladies and gentlemen, give a huge round of applause, everybody together. Let me invite Dr. Sasikumar Gendam on the stage, the president of Elsina, to please join us on the stage to hand over the memento. Let's hear it for our moderator, Mr. Devendranath, CEO and MD, Feedback Advisory Services Private Limited. Thank you for your valuable insights, sir. On the panelists, we also had Mr. Josh Folger, the President, ITHW and New Projects of Dixon Technologies. Once again, thank you so much, sir, for being a part of this wonderful session. And we also had Mr. Niranjan Nayak, the Managing Director of Delta Electronics India Private Limited. Thank you for your valuable inputs and for your valuable time. And on the panelists, we also had Mr. Satendra Singh, CEO, Sirma SGS Technology Limited. Can we give a huge round of applause once again for all our panelists and the moderator. Thank you once again to our moderator and for all our panelists.